So
Yeah.
it's really about empowerment and also talking about how generational societal trauma matters and how it's in our bodies out the womb. As a person of color, we come out already being viewed as from the majority as less than. That's going to impact somebody, even if they have solid support, they're working out all day. That could really impact them. So it's the little bits, not just someone who doesn't have anything. It's even for people who have all the things. Mental health awareness is so important.
So, Ashley, please let the people know more about you, a little bit more about your practice and all the amazing things that you do.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So I started my company, Just Be Rooted, because there's a huge mental health disparity in Florida. We're located in St. Petersburg, Florida, Tampa Bay area, and there was just a lot of, I wanted to get the help because, mental health has that stigma, therapy has that stigma, but I can't find a person that looks like me, talks like me, a safe place for all marginalized groups, persons of color, LGBTQ+, individuals who are disabled. And so that's kind of how my vision came. I have a background in working with a lot of corporate America companies, but I couldn't do everything that I wanted to do. And so without those barriers, I created the company so people can have an open space to say all the things about the injustices in the world and not feel like they have to tiptoe. And so then I moved to Georgia and wanted to do the same thing, but of course, recognize what that community needed. And it's more like creative outlets, of course, but also with that mental health aspect. So kind of like a eclectic way. We have therapists, we have harmony artists, so we can do dance, we can do breath work. If you're not ready for therapy or if you want to do like an add-on to it, narrative, poetry, just however we show up in those spaces where we have so many talents. And so I wanted to bring all of that into a safe space to work on this mental health that I feel like all persons of color really need to see, because it doesn't just start here, it's generational, right? Ancestral. We have so much just on our skin, just without us even being here. And so it's about time.
Ashley, I always like to ask what led therapists to their place in the mental health field. The reason being is just oftentimes as experts, our clients view us in a certain way, in a certain light, and they love to hear our backstory. And so obviously we understand that self-disclosure to a certain extent helps the client. And so can you tell a little bit more about what led you into the mental health field? What sparked that passion for what you're doing today?
Yeah, sure. I absolutely did not know I was going to be here. I had that pressure to be the doctor, as certain Black families have, or the medical profession, and that's what I had my undergrad in, science. And then I was applying to grad school to become a genetic counselor, and it just wasn't sticking. I didn't feel as if it was a lot of individualistic care there. And so sorority sister randomly just popped in my head, what about social work? And I educated myself and I saw what a master's can do in social work field. And I merged it into doing medical social work. But then at that time, I was experiencing anxiety for the first time. And I was like, me, anxiety. And so that's what led me to see the lack of education of mental health for persons of color. And so after corporate America jobs and still battling with my own mental health, I also realized that I had PMDD, which is really not talked about, and how that impacts the mind, body, soul. So I finally was like, okay, I want to be a spokesperson, be vulnerable, and showcase how mental health really does matter, and that you do need to talk to somebody about it. You do need to care for it just like your body, physical health care. And so that's how I came about. I did not know I was going to own my own company, do private practice work, but I knew someone needed to kind of be that advocate and push a bit harder to have that awareness. And I thought, why not be eclectic like me? That just therapy did not work. I had to do, writing, dancing, working out, different types of herbs, crystals. I'm that person. And so I wanted to hold that space for however you want to show up for yourself. It's okay, but let's just show up.
Oh, thank you for all of that. Because it reminds me of a conversation that I recently had with like my DBT group. And for those of you who don't know what DBT is dialectical behavior therapy. And the goal of DBT is to look at multiple truths and seeing the different sides of it. And I was thinking about how oftentimes we feel like we're forced to have to do one type of therapy. And so being able to like radically accept the fact that what may be great here may not be great here, but there's other components that we can incorporate as well. And so thank you for widening the scope, because at the core of it, we have clients who often are in therapy for 5, 10, 15, 30 years at a time, and they're just going out of routine or out of like comfort, so to speak. And so what I always encourage people to do is like, let's widen the scope. Let's see what are some other things that we can incorporate on our wellness journey, rather than just looking at it from a therapeutic process. Let's look at it from a whole wellness journey, a whole person. And so what helps you to start incorporating those different aspects into your own therapeutic process that also led to you creating like the way that you approach the clinical aspect of it all too?
Yeah, sure. It truly was how my mental health impacted my body. Light being, that means I feel everything. So if I am not okay, my body is not okay. And so I really understood holistic, but also I wanted to implement it in a way that worked for marginalized groups. We don't have privileges. We don't have access to healthcare sometimes. Insurances, don't get me started on that, and the quality of care that can be provided. So with figuring out for myself and ways, being a college graduate, you don't have that much money. And then, going into search work, we all know that it's very hard to find that job that gives us financial stability. So I had to make it work with the resources. And so that's kind of how I implemented in my therapeutic style. Tell me what works for you. Tell me what doesn't work for you. What culture do you want to implement? What spiritual practices do you want to implement? Do you like to draw? Let's draw out. I have clients who can't tell me their feelings, but they can tell me the color. We can still work through that. So it's not that I am giving you the tools. You are telling me your tools, and we're fine tuning them. We're adding to them. We're throwing some away that just don't need to be there. And so that's the mind, body, soul, but also the spiritual, the ethereal, the physical. It's just more than just praying about it and hoping that it'll go away. We really have to put in the work, but also sometimes as persons of color, marginalized groups, you don't know what that means because we weren't given the tools to know how to do that. And also society goes against us to get those tools. Yeah. So it's really about empowerment and also talking about how generational societal trauma matters and how it's in our bodies out the womb. As a person of color, we come out already being viewed as from the majority as less than. That's going to impact somebody, even if they have solid support, they're working out all day, that could really impact them. So it's the little bits, not just someone who doesn't have anything. It's even for people who have all the things. Mental health awareness is so important.
This year has been a whirlwind, hasn't it? And I'm pretty sure that you and your business have had to make a number of changes as a result of the pandemic. But I need you to get really present right now. Let's tap into the here and now in this very moment. When was the last time you truly checked in on your team? As a matter of fact, when was the last time that you truly thought about how you and your team are mentally and emotionally navigating through all of the adjustments that are taking place? But guess what? I'm here to help with that. Hi, my name is Sierra Hillsman, and I'm a licensed professional counselor and certified clinical trauma professional. I work with small businesses and corporations by helping their teams explore their presenting concerns. That way we can increase employee engagement and improve productivity overall. This can be done through in-person or online lunch and learn events, corporate workshops, and organizational seminars. Click the link below. That way you can start to learn how to truly invest in the overall mental and emotional wellness of your team.
Yes, definitely. The one thing that stood out to me in all of that is encouraging the individual to figure out what's already within or what's already tangible, and let's find ways to double down on that. One, that's very empowering. And it also encourages the person to recognize that there is choice. Yes, we do recognize systems of oppression. Yes, we do recognize like the disadvantages that come about, but we as a people, we're strong and we're resilient and we're very resourceful. And so finding ways to leverage those things outside of the status quo, outside of what's been told to us that we have to continue to abide by. And so it's kind of like when we're painting and you already have like your primary colors, you have the opportunity to make so many different other colors with the 3 that you have. And so thank you for taking that approach.
Yes, beautifully said.
Yes, definitely. And even in the concept of the tools, right? So once we identify our tools, we understand that it's kind of like chopping at a tree. We have to first sharpen our tools first. What are some practical strategies that you utilize with your clients, especially for individuals who are trying to explore their intersectionality?
Let's see what they are first. Sometimes we don't even know because of oppression, because it's not safe. Lack of support. So seeing self first, that strength-based mentality, let's write it out, let's see it, let's explore it. And exploration just means sitting with it. That doesn't mean you have to pick. I mean, we're always ever growing, ever changing until our last breaths. So it doesn't have to be finite. So I always tell people, my clients, to sit with it. And then if it doesn't sit well with you or with me, let's find the other person to see, what it looks like. If you want to paint it out, let's, do some creative services with my harmony artists. You want to just write it out because you don't want to talk about it yet. Let's go to narrative therapy. But the first step is just sitting with it in grace. I think individuals who are marginalized do not get the privilege to have grace for themselves. Mm-hmm. So working on my PhD in depth psychology, we'll learn about inviting the shadow in so that those negative, dark bits of us that we may not see, we may see, and we're like, oh, we need to do better. I tell them to invite that in because that's still you. Mm-hmm. Like every single bit, flaws and all, are you. Let's sit with it and look at it and love it before trying to perfect all the other societal accepted or personally accepted parts of ourselves.
Yes, definitely. And that helps to combat with guilt and shame. When we invite it in, we create space for that radical acceptance, which oftentimes is a struggle, right? Because with radical acceptance, it causes us to have to shift our mindset, so to speak. And sometimes when it comes to change, a lot of us want change, but we're so used to the systems that we've adopted over time or adapted to. It's difficult for us to sit comfortably with all parts of ourselves and not just only those bits and pieces.
Mm-hmm. Therapy sometimes is the only safe place where someone can do that. And I think as therapists, recognizing, I don't know if it's power or privilege or honor, that this may be the first time someone's showing up just them. And that's where the name Just Be Rooted comes in.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Now, can you please expound on Just Be Rooted and the remedy and harmony? When I think about harmony, because one thing that I realized with a lot of individuals, they're always looking for balance. And the way I typically explain it is just like kind of like a scale. In order for things to be balanced out, you have to have equal weights on both sides. And I always encourage people to find harmony, recognizing it's kind of like looking at an orchestra, how there's different pieces or different instruments in an orchestra. And even when those instruments aren't playing, they just don't get up and lead the symphony. They sit there and they wait for their turn, or they find ways to build like these harmonies to help expand the song. And so with that analogy, how has becoming rooted in who you are as a person helped you to start working towards like that anti-oppressive approach for your clients?
Honestly, it was loving myself and figuring that out. And that just happened last year, full disclosure. And that's where the rebranding came in. And that's where the Just Be Rooted. So a tree sways, branches fall. Sometimes there's rot, sometimes there's harm done, but it's still planted. And so that's my personal journey. I wanted to pour that into my company, and the exposure. It's not for clout or for fame. It's to show vulnerability, that this is hard. Things are going to happen. Things are going to happen to therapists. Things happen to doctors. But where are your roots? How can you find your feet again on the ground? How can you get back into body? Certain cultures call it your center. How do you find your center? But all the cultures talk about, it's still a journey, and we're going to get off kilter. We're going to go left, right, up, down, but we still find our center. And so I don't know how much more to add with your analogy about remedy and harmony. That was perfect. But it's, again, just finding those bits and pieces. It could be spiritual, it could be artistic, it could be more clinical and logical, whatever it is. What's your balance? But that doesn't mean that everything's perfect. Just what's your balance?
Yes, absolutely. And going back to that power of choice and not having to feel like a person has to choose one over the other. I think that's a huge component when it comes to the intersectionality, or even being rooted in that. Understanding that, yes, we're going to focus on this area right now in the therapeutic process, or maybe that's going to turn into something else. But over time, you're going to continue to evolve and blossom into the next best thing, or the thing that you needed when you needed it.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Ashley, can you let the people know a little bit more about your practice, where they can find you and your website and all that jazz?
Yes, thank you. So you can find us at remedyandharmony.com. And like I said, we're doing that eclectic, holistic, anti-oppressive vibe. So we have the therapy, it's myself, and I have a wonderful other therapist. And we do individual, couple, relationship. And so that means polyamory, monogamy, friends, coworkers. It's an open space for all types of relationships. And then we have that creative service, which does the body work, breath work, narrative therapy, poetry. And we're going to keep on adding whoever shows up in front of us who has a passion, a gift for our mission. We're wanting to invite them in. And so because of COVID, everything is telehealth right now, but we do have some in-person spaces in Florida. And hopefully we find a solid space in Georgia so we can do some in-person. But for Georgia, we are going to start doing in-person body movements and breath work. So that's really exciting. That's coming. And of course, telehealth is still present for individuals in Georgia. And we also open spaces for interns, MSWs, counseling interns. I love helping others and having a safe space for them to get education. Our programs are wonderful, right? But that in-house like environment and like the supervision you get really, really matters. And so having a person of color that has multiple intersectionalities, I really just want to keep an open door for future therapists and future social workers. And so, that's kind of what we're doing now. We're growing. We want to do some nonprofit vibes, give back to the community with free therapy, or working with individuals transitioning with HRT, maybe some scholarships for their surgeries, because it's also expensive to just be, and that shouldn't be. So that's our vibe. And you can find us on Instagram, Just Be Rooted, Facebook, and again, the website, remedyandharmony.com.
Oh my gosh, Ashley, that was such a bar. It's so expensive to just be, and it shouldn't be. Oh my goodness. I love that. And so for any clinician out there, please tap in with remedyandharmony.com. Please check out all their services, not only as a clinician, but even as a client. I do want to reiterate, especially with this episode, it's important for us to explore other modalities outside of the therapeutic space. One is not separate from the other. Just like the mind and the body, they're so interconnected. And so whether it's meditation, Reiki, acupuncture, breath work, whatever it is that you've been doing, you sit down and talk to your grandmama or your great grandmother and figure out what practices they used to do as well, because like generational healing is so real. I know right now we are focused on like this generational wealth, but like health is a part of wealth. So don't forget to incorporate all of those things. So guys, please make sure you're tapping into Remedy and Harmony, all things related to that. And thank you, Ashley, so much for your time and your expertise. But before you go, there's a question that I always ask my guests. Obviously, the podcast is called the Legacy Speaks Podcast. And so what would you like your legacy to say about you?
Oof. That I was rawly me, flaws and all, and I owned up to it and also grew from it and just tried to be the best version of myself.
Ooh, love it. Absolutely love it. Thank you so much for that nugget. And y'all, once again, my name is Sierra Hillsman, licensed professional counselor and founder of Legacy Speaks. Please stay connected via Legacy SPKS on everything and check out our website at legacyspks.com. You can find this streaming on YouTube, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all other streaming services as well. Once again, thank you so much for staying connected. Until next time.